It's a nice cafe.
Hi, Jonathan.
All right, Bevan, nice to see you.
Yeah, you too.
Hi, Jonathan.
Dean, good to see you again.
How are you?
I'm fine. Yeah, keeping well, thanks.
Good.
Can't grumble.
Good.
How about you?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. Yeah. Again, nothing to grumble about. I realized quite a long time ago nobody pays any attention, so I just, yeah. I'm good. Nice to see you anyway.
Yeah, it's been.
And I'm just looking at those. I'm just looking over your right shoulder and looking at that golf bag.
That way.
There's some wooden clubs in there.
I've got a few, some nice old putters in there. Keep me busy.
Yeah, I'm looking at the wooden-headed woods.
I think this one's about your generation, Dean.
1700 and...
Look at that. Hey, that's
Gee.
tomorrow's technology right there.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
That looks like my old Ben Hogan speed slot.
Good stuff. Well, nice to see you.
Afternoon, everybody.
Hi, Alan. How are you?
Very well, thanks. Packing my house to move house tomorrow.
Oh, are you?
So,
oh, good luck with that.
So, yeah. Nice, lots of stress, but it's okay.
Jonathan?
Yes.
You'll also see we've got Per, he's joined.
Per is here, yes.
Yeah, and Per's on our environmental committee from the club side, who was responsible for us to get GEO from the start.
No, very good.
I'm just coming in now.
Nice to meet you, Per.
Thank you very much.
Hello, Per. How are you?
I'm fine so far. If I understand you. Okay.
All right. Are we waiting on anybody else, Bevan?
I think Stig was going to try and join, but he wasn't sure. He was driving, so I think we're ready to start when you are, Jonathan.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Well, Dean, do you want to say a few words of sort of welcome and introduction from FEGGA's side?
Yeah, welcome. No, I mean, first of all, Jonathan, thank you for, giving this time to our students and to us. It is important to us. And I mean, going back to earlier in the year, Bevan and myself kind of felt that really was something important that we should introduce this year for the students. And so, yeah, big thank you to yourself and obviously everybody at GEO, because I mean, it's not just doing this, but it's preparing it and providing something that's valuable for all of our students. And really, to the students, guys, I mean, I think make the most of today. It's your opportunity to ask questions as well and to share some of your views, because your views are in a way the foundation of GEO, of where it is today, because so many industry people have been part of what is today. And it's important for you guys, young or old, but new to the industry maybe, to kind of share your thoughts and beliefs, because you can take it from me that Jonathan will take that on board, and he will go away and he will look at how, if they can be added to continuing his journey with his team. And you know, I think the other thing is to realize as well for you is that, you know, GEO belongs to all of us. And you know, we've got a good team that kind of works on our behalf, but it can behave in ways that maybe not always golf can behave. It can be the one that gives us a big whack up with a stick every now and then and tells us we can't really do that, or we shouldn't be doing that. And so there are a lot of things that exist on the back of GEO and why it exists today. So make the most of today. I think it's important. And yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to it as well. I mean, GEO and FEGGA have a long history going back a long time, and we're proud of that. And I think this is just another step in with another opportunity. So so collectively, you know, let's all make the most of it.
Super, thanks, Dean. Nice of you to say so. I hope I don't let you down. All right, I'm going to share my screen and then we'll get going. So Bevan, we've got a decent amount of time set aside. We'll see how we get on as to how much we need. And I'd really like this to be as informal as possible, just really relaxed, and a conversation about particularly where the students see sustainability in general terms, but also in relation to golf. It's quite rare for us to get a chance to speak, unfortunately remotely, but for us to get a chance to speak to people who are just coming into the greenkeeping profession about how they see sustainable development and how they see some of these big issues that are out there and how you feel about it and what kind of support you would like throughout your careers as you get into greenkeeping in a world that is going to be more and more driven by sustainability. So what are those pressures that you're going to face? What are the opportunities that you have? And how can, moments like this be a chance for you to tell us how you feel about that and what you'd like to get out of it? And I think it's fantastic, actually, that not only, FEGGA set up the scholarship that Bevan has put together with Alan, but that you've put sustainability into that scholarship. It's not always easy day to day when you're working, flat out, as greenkeepers and course managers, to find the space to think about things like this. But it is really important just to pull yourself away from your day jobs and think about what's happening round about you and how you can be, not just a fantastic course manager and greenkeeper, but actually also an environmental steward and a decision maker that can really make some quite influential decisions on nature, on resource use, on climate action, on community engagement. Greenkeepers can really, you already do a lot, and it's important that you continue to do more. So thanks for inviting us to help out. And I'll just share my screen now. As I say, totally flexible and informal. Bevan, just keep us right on breaks in the session when you want to stop for a cup of tea and things like that. I don't think we can probably go through all of this without a cup of tea. So particularly when you see my presentation. So stick your hands up. We'll just stop questions at any time, that kind of thing. And let's get cracking. Right, hopefully you'll be able to see this presentation. How does that look, Bevan?
Very good.
Good stuff. So yeah, we've got a little bit to get through. I thought we'd break it up into three main sections. First of all, we're going to look at sustainability trends, what's happening in the big world around us, and the way that sustainability is moving quickly. And then we're going to look at golf and sort of some of the priority issues for golf and some of the solutions, some of the things that golf facilities can do to become more sustainable, but also to become more efficient, more popular, more profitable, more resilient, all of those things that come along with sustainability. And then Kelli, my colleague, is going to join, and she's going to talk through some of the support and the solutions that are there to help you, the tools and things that are already in the industry. At end of each of these sections, I'd like to stop, and we're just going to have a Q&A. Really, really keen to hear your voices and hear your opinions. So let's just dive in. Dean just mentioned very briefly, we're not here as a commercial entity. We're not here to sell anything other than the concept and hopefully a bit of motivation and enthusiasm around sustainability. We're a non-profit organization, and for about 16 years, we've been working really collaboratively with golf. Our culture at Geo is like a caddy for sustainable golf. So FEGGA, you as greenkeepers, you are on the tee, you're playing the game, it's your sport, but you can rely on Geo to be right there, really thinking hard about how you can all best navigate sustainability and do as well as you can, and using sustainability as part of your future success and as part of the future success of the golf industry. So, you know, we really don't see ourselves as leading anything. We're here to help and facilitate. We know the landscape pretty well. We've tried to build a decent set of tools, and we want you to score well, is one way of looking at Geo. Our major goals are to help, you know, the image and reputation of golf. It's not been very good in this area at all over the last 15 to 20 years. Actually, since the 1970s and since golf really started to boom, there's been a lot of people who have had concerns about golf's environmental impact. So let's do something about that, is what we'd like to help achieve. And then secondly, where it's possible to improve the sustainability and the business performance of golf, there is room for improvement in golf. We don't get it all perfectly. There's no sector out there that has got all the sustainability solutions it needs right now. So let's be open and honest about that. Let's strive to improve where we can improve. And then if golf is walking the walk, and if golf is starting to talk the talk, think of the change that golf can be part of. Think of the inspiration, the Rory McIlroys, those sorts of people who are now starting to talk about sustainable golf. Think of the influence that you can have. Think of the influence that Kristianstad's golf club can have in the local community as a leader in sustainability and climate action, a force for good in that local area with all the things that you do. That's a great role that golf has. And quite often when we speak to environmental organizations, the thing that captivates them most is not just the physical sort of imprint of golf now, it's the ripple effect that golf can have, because people know that golf is really well connected into the business community and into society. So that third bullet point there is something that you can all help do. Have a multiplier, and don't forget that. Then more practically, we create programs, we call them on course. There's things like carbon calculators, self-assessment tools. It leads into certification. And just gradually over the years, we've been doing this with a community of partners and program participants, and it's sort of steadily growing as interest in sustainability grows, and as golf needs to show that it's a sustainable sport. So things are sort of moving in terms of the community of people that are involved. I'm really proud to say that FEGGA were part of the founding partners of that community. So alongside the R&A and the European Tour and Ryder Cup Europe, FEGGA were right there, right back to 1997 actually, when FEGGA was founded itself to around some really important environmental and sustainability principles. So FEGGA was a bit ahead of the curve, actually, by comparison to many other golf organizations in terms of recognizing the importance of this. But you can see that it's really an inclusive effort, and it's also an issue that joins up across golf. So there's logos here that are from the amateur side of the game. There's logos and brands here that are from the professional side of the game. There's logos and brands here from corporate partners and also the media. So sustainability is a common denominator for the whole of the sport of golf, and it needs to be a big community effort, actually. Outside golf, we spend quite a lot of time in these wonderful places trying to keep in touch and stay up to speed with what is happening outside golf, what is happening in what we call the mainstream world of sustainability. And it is just flying at the minute. There is no shortage of discussions, changes, initiatives, tools, frameworks, pledges, commitments, policies, regulations. it's just happening all around us at the moment, from international level to national level in Sweden, and probably right down to local level around Kristianstad's golf club. Wherever you look, sustainability is happening, and we try and stay in touch with that. So that's a bit about us and what makes us tick. We're super enthusiastic about sustainability in golf. We think it's just a great fit and something that should be completely synonymous. You know, people should think of golf and sustainability at the same time in the same sentence. But we're really pleased today to have this chance to have this conversation with you about the future. And if sustainability is driving in a certain direction, how is golf going to keep up with that and even be at the forefront of it and ahead of the curve? So what's happening in the world of sustainability? I'm going to go through a few slides and then we're going to stop and talk through this. I don't really want this all to be me talking. It would be good to hear your voices. So let's go back. There'll be a lot of young people in the room that won't have been around when this happened. But this is one of the first images of the planet Earth from the moon in 1968 as part of the US mission to the moon. And what happened then, for all you young people, is that the society got a new consciousness, a new understanding that, you know, we are one ball sitting in this kind of infinite universe, and that is our home, and that is all we have. And it was amazing around about the late 60s and 70s how that sparked off an awareness in society that, you know, it's quite fragile. It's quite a fragile situation to be, and that is not how humanity had seen itself prior to, you know, like stepping back and looking in. And that kicked off the environmental movement as we know it now. And there was various other things that happened in the 70s, things to do with pesticides, bird loss was really noted in the 1970s and a lot of concern about it. And it was the beginning of where we're at now in terms of our awareness of the environment and the fundamental importance of the environment to us as human beings on that one planet. And then we've all tried to wriggle and move and talk about sustainability for the last, 40 years. And there's no getting away from the fact that there is no planet B. That is still what we have. And we need to try and come up with the solutions that enable what will be, not too far away, 9 billion people living and working and living well within the limits of that one planet. And this is the realization that's coming home. And that's why people are talking about sustainability and sustainable development as so fundamental to all of our futures. It doesn't matter whether you play golf or you go cycling. It doesn't matter what job you have. It doesn't really matter what part of the world you live in. This is fundamentally important for future generations. And, the indicators are showing us just how important that is. And some of the indicators show us that we're not actually living within those means at the moment. This is a WWF global footprint report, which shows that in societies like in Scotland and Sweden, we're currently using between 1.5 and 1.7 Earths each in terms of what we consume and the Earth's ability to provide that to the population. So we have to look at ways to live, work, and play more sustainably as individuals, but also as entire sectors like the sport of golf. And I think this is a bit theoretical, but this is maybe your sort of academic slide for the day, which is we've come from, I guess, through the sort of 1980s in particular, from a view that as long as the economy is growing, as long as we're all getting better off financially, then what happens to nature and society doesn't really matter. Nature is just there to be exploited. That's what that left-hand bubble shows. And then in the 1990s, we moved into that middle picture, which was, we need to do something to balance our social, economic, and environmental thinking and behavior. And actually what that's shown over recent trends is that that's not even enough. We actually need to reverse the way that we look at the world, which is that almost everything is environmentally orientated and environmentally driven. And that actually society functions in the environment, and the economy is a function of society. And I've just mentioned this hopefully not to bore you, but just to let you know that that is the way that more and more decision makers in the world are looking at the world. From where we were 30 years ago, let's kind of, make money and, to hell with the rest, to, let's try and make money and still exploit the environment and do what we need to for communities and society, to this much more socially and environmentally driven view of the world. That is a sort of theoretical diagram, but I'm going to show you how it's playing out. So without being too sort of rude about it, we always think as an environmental and sustainability group that if the business people of the world and if accountants are starting to think about nature and the environment, then something must be happening. So, something must be changing. And this is the World Economic Forum. So this is the biggest gathering of all of the world's economists and accountants and economic ministries. So the public and private sector come together in Davos up in Switzerland, in the Swiss Alps, once per year, and they talk about the things that are most fundamentally affecting the world. Now, 30 years ago, this diagram didn't look like this, but you can see now how many of the long-term risks for the economy are directly linked to the environment. So from biodiversity loss to climate action failure and the cost of that, to environmental disasters, extreme weather, natural disasters, and even things like food crises and water crises, which are environmentally driven. So the vast majority of things on that outlook, and it's quite a pessimistic outlook, are fundamentally environmental. And that's now our economic understanding that, there is no viable functioning long-term economy unless we're looking after the natural resources that feed that economy. And that model actually is quite interesting for a golf club. If you think about the dependencies that a golf club has, quite a few of them are environmental. Water and land, flooding, droughts, weather and climate. So, we all have environmental dependencies that we haven't really noticed before. What this shows is that the world's economists are really starting to notice what those core environmental dependencies are that we all have. And then, of course, we're seeing this play out. So we know that there is human-induced climate change taking place through so over the last 150 years, rapidly accelerating carbon emissions. And we know that that's doing certain things to the climate. So if you are working in golf in Australia at the minute as a course manager, these are some of the things that you are experiencing, and you're experiencing more acutely year on year, more extremes of flooding, heat and drought and storm damage across the continent of Australia every single year. Here's another example. If you were a course manager in the US, pick some of those sort of southeastern states in the US. What this shows is, so in the last 33 years, in some parts of southeastern America, in fact, across America, we're seeing more than 20 additional days above 90 degrees, which is technically termed extreme heat, when people really shouldn't be outdoors for any particular, any sort of meaningful length of time. So think about, from your point of view as a course manager, and how you adapt to that and need to cope with that, and also from a golfing point of view. When the heat gets to 90 degrees, if it's humid, then what happens is that authorities like education providers, this is actually Georgia State Education Department, they pinned a tweet this summer, and this was the pinned tweet, which was letting parents know that their children shouldn't be outdoors for more than 15 minutes. When the temperature and humidity gets to a certain point, it effectively becomes unlivable for human beings in that climate. So these are some of the things that are happening. Those extreme heat events around the world are increasing, and the knock-on effect to us as human beings is that, you know, it becomes actually, you know, weather conditions that stop people from playing golf and stop people from recreating outdoors. So, you know, some quite acute and serious issues arising. We're also seeing this in terms of like drought and a shortage of rainfall. You know, in South Africa, if you're a course manager down there at the minute, then, you know, regularly you're experiencing drought conditions, and regularly you're experiencing pressure where other parts of society need that water that you're irrigating, and regularly you're in the media for, you know, the luxurious use of water, you know, that's going on to golf courses. So what's going to be done about that? I think water is probably one of the biggest pressures that golf has, where we don't quite have all the answers, but I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on that. And then by contrast, we're having periods of greater dry, and we're having periods of greater wet, and less in between. So more flooding, more extreme weather events, which can impact golf courses. This is a golf course in Houston, in America, on the left-hand side there. But it's also a place where golf courses can be a part of the solution in communities. There's quite a lot of interest and a few good case studies now where, you know, improving the drainage on the golf course is also a very good thing for the local community. So the ways that the golf course can provide a win-win to look after itself, but also do something positive around like flood management, for example. And then I'm going to keep running through. You know, we've been damaging the biodiversity of the world at really a rapid rate. We need all types of land use to try and be as ecologically rich as they can be, to try and have as much biodiversity on them as they possibly can. And that is a huge opportunity for golf, particularly in urban areas and urban fringe areas and greenbelt areas, and maybe an agricultural dominated land. You know, how can golf really step up and be part of this restoration of nature, which is really, really important for all of us. So there, you know, there's some not very heartening trends, although there are more and more good success stories in nature conservation. But how can we make golf really, really part of that success? And then sustainability is, you know, as you all know, spreading out into lots of other things. Here's two models. Here's the way that we used to do things. In terms of materials and products, we would extract them, produce them, sell them, consume them, waste them, and dump them. And luckily, the world is moving more, and business and communities, governments are moving more into this other circular view of the world, which actually is a great turnaround. It's a great example of the way that we all used to do something, and now we're starting to do it really quite differently. That sort of revolution that is taking place in the way that things are sourced, to produced, to supplied, to distributed, to sold, to consumed, and then how that goes back in. So waste becoming a product is actually really inspiring. I think that, you know, it really shows that we've got a chance to change the way that we do things. So many different materials like that. Again, from a golf club's point of view, what can this do for you? How can you be part of that circular economy, as they call it? Green waste would be one big area that golf courses can really contribute there. But it could be other things around the clubhouse. It could be teas. It could be coffee cups. It can be small things, or it can be quite big things. But I'd really encourage you to start thinking about any materials or products you use. Where did they come from? How much do I use them? What happens to after I've finished with it? Isn't there something else? Is there something else that we could buy instead? Do we really need to buy that in the first place? You know, really drilling down hard on materials. It's a whole rich, wonderful world of materials that you will use. So how can you really get on top of that? Is you know, a really important part of all of this. And then we can't relax and behave the way that we used to, because because of the pressures in the world, whether they're environmental or political or economic, we are just seeing that we can't be as lax or as relaxed with our consumption of resources anymore, because it's just so expensive, as you all know, in terms of like fuel prices and energy prices and the cost of some of the materials and some of the bulk materials that golf courses are consuming. It is absolutely a time for resource efficiency and thinking outside the box. So what are we seeing? So those are some of the challenges we've got. Here are some of what's happening. So you can rest assured governments are regulating. Governments are setting policies and targets all around us. Some of them you'll see and some of them you'll notice. Others, they're just being churned out and they kind of live behind the scenes, but they're changing the way that we live. And some of them are big, like this, the carbon reduction targets. This was the Paris Agreement in 2016, where the strongest carbon reduction targets that we've ever had were put in place. 50% reduction in direct emissions by 2030. That's only 7.5 years away. And what they call net zero by 2045. That's a point where we are trying to get to, where the direct carbon that we emit and the ecosystem restoration that we creates a net zero situation in terms of carbon emissions based on our current levels of emissions. There are parts of golf, like the European Tour Group. So the DP World Tour have actually just signed up to that commitment. There's other parts of golf that will be doing the same. There are golf tournaments that are going on that journey, and there are 1 or 2 golfing nations where the national federations are saying, yes, we want to be part of that journey. In Sweden, the Swedish government were one of the first governments in the world to sign up to those targets before the Paris Agreement, to say that's the clean and green Sweden that the government wants to help move towards. Now, if you can get onto that sort of journey, then there are incentives and there are things that can help you. If you as a sector of business are not on that journey, then you'll start to notice that things start to count against you. Taxes and those sorts of things will kick in. So anyway, that's one of the big ones. Dean knows this well. We've just gone through a rather urgent response to the European Commission. The Sustainable Use Directive for Pesticides, that is about 10 years old. The European Commission and the European Union were very frustrated at what it was achieving. They didn't think it was achieving enough pesticide reduction in society. So they have proposed a new regulation, which means that it wouldn't be flexible for countries to decide. It would just be a blanket regulation across the whole of Europe. And that was really heading towards regulating against golf courses, really putting golf courses into the bracket of public spaces and urban green space. And if that happens, then golf will be a really, really soft spot for basically blanket bans on plant protection products going forward. So regulation is happening, and it has been happening. What's happening now is that the regulation is starting to get closer and closer to golf. It's becoming more tangible for the golf industry and kind of less generic. Right, I'm going to run through these quickly. We'll come back to these. Maybe you've heard of them, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. These are 17 goals for a fairer and more sustainable planet. And they were launched by the United Nations. And again, Sweden, possibly the community in Kristianstad, Bevan, will be connected to this somehow. So how can your golf club say that you are actually providing good health and well-being, gender equality, responsible consumption production, sustainable cities and communities, climate action, life on land, working in partnership for the goals? So there are a few in here of these 17 goals that really, they work well for golf. Really just inherently in the way that golf can contribute to them. So we'll talk a bit more about these later, but These are something that are good to connect to if you can. I won't mention this too much, but sustainability is in almost every big and successful business in the world now, in terms of innovation and changing products and the way that they market themselves. I mean, Amazon, for example, all of their advertising is basically clean energy and sustainable EDF. Yeah, I mean, there's no company in the world now that's not really embracing sustainability. And there's a reason for that. It's because young people like yourselves, customers, want more sustainable products. You want ethical lifestyles, and you want to feel good about your life, the way that you live and what you consume. And you can see some of the stats here, just how, Dean, you know, people that are not us are even more concerned about the environment, you know, and really want that to be something that they stand for, and something that they can feel good about. And I'm just about done, and then we'll stop for questions. But one of the things that is actually worth taking notice of is that for golf clubs, that is because you are community-based land, you know, you occupy a reasonable amount of land in the community, and you're quite high profile. Golf clubs tend to be quite noticeable in the community. And, you know, the golf clubs advertise themselves and they draw attention to themselves. So around you, there will be others that are taking action. Colleges, universities, schools, public parks, civic groups, community councils, wherever people are getting together, their churches, wherever they're getting together, they're talking about these environmental issues and sustainability locally to them. And we've noticed over the years that quite often they don't think golf is really at the table. They don't know that golf clubs are also doing this kind of work. So this can be, again, the sort of thing that as a golf club and a greenkeeper, if your sustainability work is not known, if it's not recognizable, people may think you're not doing it. And they may be talking about how to do it in the local area. And so that can be a point of tension for a golf club, or if the golf club can get itself right there at some of these meetings and in this space, like the sustainable communities space, it's amazing how well the golf clubs are received. And actually the benefits are there. We've seen new members, we've seen grants and awards, we've seen infrastructure projects, we've seen car charging points put in, just a whole range of things that come out of the golf club being part of the local community's work. It's a really rich area and something I would encourage every course manager to think about devoting a little bit of time to alongside their general manager. And that's all part of this. It's about, you know, there's a lot of pressure on urban land. How are we going to make the most of it? How are elected government officials being accountable for land being used as productively and sustainably as possible? So it's really important that golf clubs are able to show that. And then a final tangent before I stop is sport. So golf is also, as well as a land use, a fantastic sport, a high profile sport. And it's one of the sports that is moving forward with sustainability more. So the International Olympic Committee are now promoting strongly a more sustainable games. They have to do that. It's part of the future of the Olympics. The United Nations has created a thing called the Sports for Climate Action, which is back to that target I mentioned about 50% reduction in carbon emissions. Tennis, World Rugby, sailing, most winter sports, football, NHL. There is a huge movement at the minute in sport becoming more sustainable. And what's actually really interesting is a big movement in sports personalities and celebrities and athletes, elite athletes, really driving this forward. So that is interesting to see that some of these highest profile people are, even if they're not perfect themselves, are trying to do something which raises awareness and inspires young people and the future generations. This is all really important now. We're at a bit of a turning point with sustainability. You'll hear people talk about tipping points, like, you know, the Greenland ice sheets or the acidification of the oceans, you know, things that are happening around the world which are accelerating. So, you know, that's why there's so much focus and urgency at the minute. You know, 1.5 degrees of global heating. How can we sort of stay within some of those targets? So a lot at the minute. In fact, you guys are scholars. You are living currently within what people are calling the decade of action. You know, this is the point where we need to really push ourselves in sustainable development. I'm going to pose with a couple of questions before we finish. Is golf part of that sustainable future? What does golf have to offer in a world that is increasingly driven by sustainability? Are we the problem or are we the solution? Are we the good guys or the bad guys? How dependent are we on critical resources, and how is that? Where does that leave us, particularly things like water? What do we do about our negative image? These are two adverts by WWF in Turkey. One shows golf a sponge that consumes 15,000 cubic meters of water per day. Please stop golf, it says. And the other one shows somebody swinging an axe, which is each course is responsible for 200,000 trees being lost. Please stop golf. So what can we do to change golf's image? And I'll leave this one up before the questions. Can we get the game to be widely recognized as a solution to the problems that we have, the challenges that we have? And I use that slide because for some people, that's an image of land that could be better used. And for others, it's an image of land that is very, very well used. And that's the sort of like, that's the path that golf walks on. And the onus is on the golf industry to show that that is land well used, land and resources well used within that type of city that's under increasing pressure with all the other pressures that we have. So Bevan, I'm going to stop here. I know I covered a lot in terms of throwing a mass of sustainability words and concepts and trends at the students there, but I'm really interested to hear what people at your end think about that. Is that over the top? Is it hyperbole? Do you agree with it? Does it excite you or scare you, or are you not bothered? And by the way, this is an open conversation, so feel free, you know, all and any thoughts and comments are totally legitimate. I'd love to hear them.
Guys?
Yes, of course. Hi, my name is Josip. I have a question. You mentioned that golf courses are not well represented in community because of the lack of, let's say that advertisement or lack of people understanding of what we do. So I have a question for you. Does Geo Foundation has a ranking system like Michelin, for example, like 5 stars for the better? Do you have a rating system which can be advertised on golf courses?
Yeah, thanks, Joseph. Yeah, so I think just to clarify, I think that there are more golf courses now getting out into the community and talking about sustainability than there were 10 or 15 years ago. But there are still, I think, a lot of golf clubs that are not spending the time doing that and not really thinking about how to represent themselves around these kinds of issues that we've been talking about. So what we did a few years ago, 10, 15 years ago, was we created a certification scheme. So this is like a way that a golf club can do some good work, track that good work, and then get recognition for the good work that they're doing. And my colleague Kelli is going to talk about that in the third part of today's session. So it is like a ranking system. It's an award. It's a seal of approval for sustainable golf. And actually, that's an award that Kristianstad has had since since 2015, I think, Bevan.
Great, thanks. That answers my question.
Yeah, you'll hear more about it shortly, Joseph. Any other points?
Hello, I'm Martin. Yeah, it's true. The golf can connect peoples because we need to change the maybe a little bit health of people and a little bit change health of country, and we can do same on the one place in golf course because people can walking there, sports, make a sports there, and we can make better country with some processing, change some process.
Did you say, sorry, the signal wasn't very good there. Did you say a better community or a better country?
Same, both, because people can be healthy and we can make a healthy country.
Yeah, I really like that view. There's you know, those bubbles, social, economic, and environmental. That in sometimes people say, well, that's a golf course. So a golf course, you've got that environment, you've got 60 hectares, let's say, of environment. And within that, you've got all those people that come to recreate, not just play golf, but as you say, they can maybe also be doing some walking or some other sort of multifunctionality. And then those people generate an economic benefit. So in a way, golf can just be it can be that diagram. It can be those three sustainability bubbles in one place, really identifiably. And because of that, you're right, it can kind of symbolize something that people are trying to do maybe on a regional level or maybe trying to do it on a national level. You know, bringing people into nature to have an economic benefit is basically what golf clubs do. Just on the point about community, you mentioned about sort of recreation. Do you think those things like walking or, you know, other recreation, is that something that you could see more golf courses trying to do?
I think, yeah, because you tell it's 60 hectares of area and there's a lot of places for everyone, not only for golf players. And when you're educating the visitors, not golf players, they can live together there or exist together there, and golfers can enjoy the game and the other places can enjoy the nature, the mountain nature or something like that.
Yeah.
No, can I come in?
Yes, please, Per.
We have at Kristianstad Golf Course, we have made a leaflet about the wild flowers you are able to see when you're not on the golf course, of course, on the side of the golf, in the rough. Perhaps you can find some. We have made leaflets of the wild flowers. So, and that is very popular. We are also walking around there in the early spring to look at the wild flowers. So you can find more than a golf ball in the golf course.
Yeah, it's a good point, actually. And there have been, so it's interesting, like the golf and ecology point, there are golf courses which, I mean, arguably don't have as much wildlife on them as they could. There are golf courses that are, you know, quite sterile ecologically around the world. But, and I think there are things that could be done to improve the ecology of those golf courses and probably the enjoyment of those golf courses. because we quite like to play in natural landscapes. And often, you know, when we play golf, the most memorable golf courses are the ones that have nature wrapped up in them. So I think there's for some courses, it's about improvement, but there's been some studies that show that in other cases, this could well be the case here, that a golf course where nature is allowed to come in has more species diversity. There's more range of species on the golf course than neighboring nature reserves, and certainly more than neighboring agriculture. So this idea that golf courses can be hotspots for biodiversity is really true, but it's not going to happen by accident. It needs to be something that course managers design and think about and plan for. And I think as young greenkeepers and course managers, I would really encourage you to take that away, that, you know, your decisions will determine how much biodiversity is on your golf course. So be active in thinking about it. Be active in creating spaces. Don't be too active in managing the habitats. Quite often nature is good at looking after itself. But don't just let the ecology happen by accident, because you might miss opportunities. And I think there are probably golf courses where quite a lot of opportunities are being missed just by thinking that the golf course is good for nature. You need to work at it. But Per, that's a great point. You know, when there's good nature on golf courses, let's tell people about that, the golfers and also the community. All right, let's take another question. What about any concerns for the future? So if the world is moving very quickly in sustainability, who thinks golf's keeping up?
Sorry, I had a different question.
Yeah, go for it.
It's not actually a question, it's a concern. My concern is a lot of golf courses are situated next to the sea level, and the rising sea levels are apparently a big problem for the future. And I really don't see an exit from that one. So what do you think about that one?
Yeah, there is a lot of, well, there are only, it's round about 240, 250 true links courses in the world. So they're quite rare. Of the 39,000 golf courses, it's a small group that are links courses. And yeah, there is concern that, you know, those areas are vulnerable to sea level rise and also more storms, like more storm damage. And that combination is causing more erosion around those areas. There have been some successes, but the main thing at the minute is that governments don't tend to see those golf courses as what they call coastal structures, like a hotel or a road or a business park. If those things are on the coast, then big defenses are usually put in to protect them. And golf courses are seen as semi-natural landscapes. So the government policy is often not to protect them in the same way. And that is a real challenge for golf. That's a huge concern when you look at some of the land that is being lost. There are one or two coastal courses who have bought land inland and as an insurance policy, so that they can start to realign and reconstruct the golf course. But the golf course, the links course as we know it now, may not be the same links course as in, 100, 200 years time. It's an interesting philosophical one, because those original sand dunes were already moving when the golf courses were created originally. And so some people think, well, golf courses on the coast should continue to align and adapt to the changing coastline. But the big issue is that the government don't see it as a fixed coastal structure. so it doesn't get the same protection. It's a tricky one. That's a very tricky one. All right. Any more quick points about concerns or whether you think golf is keeping up?
I
Okay,
have one
quick.
here. I'm
Okay.
Kim. So I have a concern regarding back in 2012 in Rio, we put it up sustainability goals for all over the world to reach in 2030. My concern is that by going into pandemics, economical crisis, stuff like that, we see already now that those goals are skipped and we're not really able to reach those goals in the amount of time that we wanted. How do we deal with that? Because from my point of view, we cannot just keep on skipping the goals we set for a certain time period. And just be happy with that.
Yeah. I think that's, I think that's probably all, the biggest concern that anybody, interested in sustainability has is that the macro, like the macro trends that we have as society are heading in a certain direction and they get knocked off course. And, those getting knocked off course, I mean, there's already a huge amount of complexity in sustainable development. There's a lot to change in terms of like systems of production, systems of consumption, energy systems, lots of things to change. So it's hard, it's almost like hard enough without it getting pushed off. And I think that is the big concern, is whether from a sort of macro view, we can get to the point we need to get to quickly enough. But then, and that is not an exact science, and it's not even a straight route. As you're saying, it kind of gets moved and, cul-de-sacs and dead ends as well. There's technologies that are promoted as the absolute technology of the future, and then it becomes a dead end. So we really have to keep finding our way and be really persistent about finding the way. The good thing is that we can show, like through the pandemic and through other things, that we can change things quickly when we really want to. So, there are negative tipping points in sustainability, but there are also really positive ones where energy technology starts to boom, where who knows, it may be hydrogen power, for example, starts to really scale and boom. Some of the recent wins in the biodiversity COPs, so there's a climate COP and there's a biodiversity COP, convention of parties. So the biodiversity wins around, achieving a third of the earth as protected sort of biodiverse ecosystem protected zones. Some of those things they're not quite there, but they're certainly moving in that direction. So some of those big biodiversity protections could really matter. They could help a huge amount. But you're right. I mean, we should all be concerned about that. And I think one of the things about the macro trends is that you can feel a bit helpless about doing something about them because they're in the hands of a small number of government and politicians and elected people. But I wouldn't lose faith altogether that those macro trends, there's not going to be tipping points and acceleration that could happen on some of those big issues, particularly to do with production and consumption, protection of biodiversity and energy systems. But yeah, good point.
Jonathan, I've got a question.
Yep.
What's being done in the way of communication towards golfers and not only golf courses and greenkeepers? For example, if chemicals get taken away from golf courses in Northern Europe and the reduction of fertilizers and the reduction of water, the potential is the quality of the golf courses goes down before it gets better. Are the golfers, our members, or our green fee guests going to appreciate this? Do they know this? The reasons behind it, and what's being done to promote this to the golfer?
Yeah. So I think being honest, Bevan, my view of that is that given the number of golf clubs and the number of golfers around the world, that it would probably be fair to say that in an organized way, not a lot of golfer communications. And I mean that in terms of the level of visibility and like the centralization of messages. Like, are there some things that golf could help clubs, so golf bodies could help clubs communicate to golfers? I don't think golf has actually really taken that whole area on yet to any meaningful or significant level. So what's happened, and what I think we could see, is that it's really left club by club and greenkeeper by greenkeeper. There are some countries and there's some greenkeeper associations, actually FEGGA members, who have started to put some comms material together. But it's a bit more organic, and it's about people communicating when they're under pressure to communicate. It would be a very good thing for golf to spend more time on, because well, and it would also support greenkeepers. I think greenkeepers are quite often left to be in pressured situations and then to come up with the answers, even if there's not an easy answer. And it can be quite an isolating position for greenkeepers if they're left in that place and not supported. I think we've done a lot over the last 10 to 15 years to communicate to greenkeepers and general managers, like the decision makers in the club. We haven't really communicated to the consumer, and the golfer is the consumer. It would be like, if there was an analogy, it would be like, it would be a little bit like if Coca-Cola, if it became apparent that Coca-Cola had too much sugar in it and the public didn't want to eat as much sugar, then Coca-Cola would go out and they would create Coke Zero. Or, do you know what I mean? They'd take the consumer on a journey. They would adapt their product and they would tell the consumer about the adapted product, and they would market it to them as a good adapted product. And I think that sort of like producer consumer type communications would be a great thing for golf to work on, because, you know, it might be more and more difficult to produce the same product because of regulation and because of water availability and things like that. Costs, the fertilizers. It might be difficult to create the same product. We have to start communicating to the consumer. And I think we could help greenkeepers in that. I think the golf bodies could help greenkeepers with that. Dean, have you any thoughts on that one?
I have, yes, a lot. I mean, I guess, put quite simply, golf's done a really bad job at actually promoting awareness to golfers. I think golf's done a good job at, you know, kind of promoting the advantages and the responsibility that we have as golf clubs to do and adapt in different ways. But I think golf's done a really, it's not done a very good job in terms of promoting. And I think, just as you've said, in the last 15 years in particular, you know, we've done such a good job in terms of trying to be more sustainably focused. And what's the reality is now out in let's say in Europe, is that we have so many variables between one country and another. Some countries have been really proactive and worked together collectively and achieved really good things, and then others have done nothing. And so there's a real imbalance throughout the whole of Europe now in terms of where golf is and what countries have done, and now with this pesticide situation, I mean, the reality is that you could have one country that is doing all the right things, but actually when you look at some of the golf courses, they're not very good. If you put those golf courses in another country, that superintendent in that other country would lose their job. And that's the reality of it. There are some real, now I think, imbalances that are not just subtle, they're quite extreme. And I think that's one of the problems that we're facing now. And it cannot be greenkeeper associations all the while beating the drum, telling golfers that they need to be a little bit more conservative in their expectation. It needs golf to be saying it needs to be conservative in its approach to expectation, and that again is a real variable, because you know, expectation in one country is very different to an expectation in another country. And I think that for us to keep, because we have made a lot of, I think, progress, but you know, again, it's more in one country than another. So I think that that's a real challenge. And one of the points I'd like to make also, going back to Kim's point on the pandemic and whether that would have any impact. I can only talk about it from my experience at my own golf club. You know, 3 years ago, we as a golf club, we were, and I would say as best we can, become very committed to taking a real drive with sustainability on our golf course. And we had one person retire at the beginning of the COVID period. And because of all the uncertainty, we didn't replace that person. And now we were just at a point this year where we were going to replace that person. And we're an average golf club, but with all the challenges that are existing now, with the financial costs, the rising in costs, the uncertainty, golfers having to make choices about their own lives, we decided we couldn't do it. Now, the impact that has is that a lot of things that we were trying to do on our golf courses are dictated by people, and we don't have the people to do it. So we will definitely suffer because we're not being able to do everything that we wanted to do. And that's nobody's fault. It's just, but it is a reality, and a reality that for, I would say, a lot of golf clubs, they're going to be faced with, and that is a challenge, really. And I know it is for us, and we're not happy about it. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Dean. Thanks. Just, I didn't think, Bevan, there was going to be any homework from this session, but I think there might be. So what would be good, Bevan, actually, what would be interesting, maybe each of the scholars afterwards could just write down what's their key message to golfers. If you had a chance to say one thing, like stick it up on the notice board to golfers, what would it be? How many scholars are there? 10? 7, yeah. So why not, Bevan, see if each of you can have a go at that, and just we can share them afterwards by email. Be really interested to see that. I'm also thinking, because we've got Sustainable Golf Week coming up in 2 weeks' time, it might be quite interesting if the scholars were willing. It might be interesting to bundle those messages to golfers up and just put them out as a little social media type thing. Just to give you a little, we'd like to give this event and to give you all a little bit of visibility as, you know, amongst the leading sort of greenkeeping students in Europe. So that might be one interesting thing to do, Bevan, if you have a think about it and see how you feel.
Absolutely.
I'm going to move on in the interest of time. I think we'll just do this next segment and then we'll stop for a cup of tea. We're moving on to look a little bit more at golf now, and a little bit more at some of the priorities and solutions. One of the things that we can definitely do in a world of sustainability is start by making it easier to understand, easier to implement, and easier to talk about. So, I mean, that thing on the left-hand side there is horrible. And that's just some of the words linked into sustainability. So what we did a few years ago was we created a thing, we sometimes call it like a sustainable golf agenda, basically. So of all of those things that are happening on the left there, if we really boiled it down to what a golf club can do, how would we describe it? And we started to move into thinking about 4 sort of main buckets of activity. Imagine your golf club was fostering nature, was conserving resources, strengthening the community, and taking climate action. Almost everything on the left-hand side falls into those 4 buckets in some way or another. So I'm really interested to hear your thoughts on this. I'm going to describe it briefly. What do you think about this as a sort of lens, like a way of looking at sustainability at your club? And a few action areas, actually. So when we talk about fostering nature, we talk about understanding and protecting and enhancing the biodiversity and just generally the land that is in your care. So this is all the great golf environment, the 60 hectares of land. So how are you looking after those habitats and biodiversity? What is your turf grass management? Because it is part of the management of the natural landscape, even though it's modified. So what kind of grasses have you got, and what kind of cultural management methods, and how do you look after the soil ecology? You know, those things are all part of the biology of the whole site. And then if you're doing good things in biodiversity and habitats and turf grass management, how do you avoid undoing all your good work by spilling something or having a pollution incident or leaching or runoff? So pollution prevention being part of like maintaining a clean and healthy natural environment. So that's really the sort of fostering nature part. Then in terms of what you're consuming, you know, how are you conserving water and energy, and how are you purchasing responsibly and lowering waste? So we talk about 3 main resources: energy, water, and materials. Pretty much all of the main things that you buy and consume that go into the management of the golf course will fall into that bucket: sands, gravels, compost, fertilizers, pesticides, fuel, grid electricity, biofuel, whatever it might be, potable water, treated sewage effluent, recycled surface water, everything pretty much that you consume. The major consumption areas are in there. And when we talk about strength and community, because sustainability is also about the social side, it's about you know, caring for caring for people and being considerate and respectful, which plays out in lots of different ways in lots of different parts of the world. I mean, in parts of Canada, for example, you know, the care and consideration that's now required amongst First Nations and so on. If you're in Australia, similar. So this can be like human rights on the one extreme, but it can just be about, you know, being thoughtful and considerate in the community and looking at ways that you can contribute. So we know that golf delivers a lot: health and well-being, employment, volunteering, lifelong learning, a lot of great things that golf does. But how, you know, to the point that was made before, how can we also increase outreach and maybe some other elements of accessibility, not just to the golf course land, but maybe to the clubhouse and some other things that the golf club can do? And then how can golf start to communicate and talk about sustainability and bring it to life a little bit within the local area? These are all things about like social cohesion and sustainable communities that golf can help do. And then we've added this in the last few years because climate action and concerns over carbon emissions have become such a big thing. We decided to make this 4th action area taking climate action and striving for what we could see as a net positive climate impact. So that means that your golf course could actually be part of the climate solution and not part of the problem. If you are reducing your emissions, and you're increasing your carbon storage and sequestration. And also offsetting factors into this. If you are doing any offsetting, if you do it in the right way, it can have a net positive effect locally and globally through the way that offsetting is done. And I'll field any questions about carbon offsetting or anything to do with carbon when we stop. But there's also this way, as I say, that a golf club can really drive down its emissions and drive up its carbon sequestration. And if it's got unavoidable emissions, then to do something through credible mitigation. So that agenda, we've developed, and we have noticed that it seems to work quite well out across the industry. Actually, Dean, we've seen quite a few greenkeepers in interviews, internal club interviews, but also sort of writing articles and talking about sustainability, just talking about, when somebody says, what do you do? Oh, it's nature, resources, community, and climate action. And, all of my sustainability work kind of falls into those 4 buckets. So we've tried to take something complicated and turn it into something quite straightforward. Now, when we see this playing out in the industry, we see more and more examples of golf clubs doing some of like the brilliant basics and doing them really well, like I mentioned before, thinking hard about some of the brilliant basics: nature, resources, community, and climate. Here's an example. This movement in naturalization of golf courses has been great to see. I mean, really, in the last sort of 5 to 10 years, there's been a lot of effort, mainly from a cost-cutting point of view, but if it's done well, it can really enhance the playing quality. It can enhance the experience that you're offering to golfers. So this is an example here, Hunley Hotel and Golf Club up in the northeast of England. It's a cost-saving measure. It's also reduced their carbon emissions by quite a lot, and a really, really big increase in the area of native grassland out across the golf course. Here's another one from Anderstein. So they undertook a project which was to just start to play around with the mowing patterns of the fairways, whether they were striped or just like half and half, and also where they could find more semi-rough and more pockets of natural rough. And really, as a sort of landscape enhancement project, how do we make this landscape look even better than it already does? And you can see there that, because they were trying to do it in a way that reduced costs and reduced fuel, it also reduced carbon emissions as well across the golf course. And as you can see, is really part of making for a fantastic golf landscape. So I think, in terms of some of the priorities, working with nature and allowing nature into the golf course is probably the one biggest and easiest thing that you can do if you want to reduce water, energy, and materials, if you want to increase biodiversity, if you want to reduce carbon emissions, and if you want to increase carbon storage. That naturalization should really be front and center of how you're looking at the golf landscape. So that's one area that we see a lot. And then we've seen a lot around energy systems in golf clubs over the last few years as well, looking at how to get onto clean grid energy, and then how to supplement that with renewable energies, mostly solar, but quite a few wind turbines and things as well. 1 or 2 examples of micro hydro. So where there's a river next to the golf course, to actually plug in a micro hydro unit and generate power there. So clubs are getting quite innovative around this whole area of where their energy comes from. And at the minute, if you're a golf club that has gone through energy efficiency measures and supplemented, like supplying your own energy, then you will be in a much better position, obviously, because the way that energy prices are going. So being more self-sufficient and more efficient on energy is a really good thing to be doing. The return on investment period for things like this, for solar panels, I mean, it used to be, 12, 8, 10, 8 years. And now we're seeing return on investment of, 4 or 5 years, before the installation of the technology will pay itself back. And even things like this, you know, like this was a very carefully targeted audit of energy at Woburn Golf Club. And really what showed up was that the lighting was old and out of date. And so there was the installation, particularly in and around the pro shop. And, you know, good savings, £2,500 a year, which is definitely going to pay itself back very quickly. And then we are seeing a whole range of innovations. I'm going to show a couple of them, actually. Here's a nice one from you, Bevan. This is the point that Per made about the great biodiversity at Kristianstad. I'm just going to close my screen and cut across to this. Maybe it's another piece of homework. Now, this would be a really good one. As well as thinking about one thing that you'd like to say to golfers, carefully worded, not too rude, all right? That language. Maybe you could go in and create a highlight or have a think about a few Kristianstad sustainability highlights, Bevan, not to put you too much on the spot. But this is the page. These are stories that are created by golf clubs, courses and tournaments. You can see that I've selected Sweden. These are all the countries that these sustainable golf highlights are created. And then you can tag them by nature, resources, and community. And then when you search that, it brings you all these stories. This is a knowledge sharing tool. As well as helping you get the message out at your golf club, it's also a way of sharing ideas with other greenkeepers to help one another. So if as students, you'd like to go in here and see what other courses in Sweden are doing, you'll find biodiversity, cultural heritage, more biodiversity, cultural heritage, biodiversity, social community engagement, cooperation with the EPA, robot mowers, charging points for guests, quite a big solar panel installation, approaches to reduce chemical consumption, upgrading an old irrigation system, saving water and future-proofing. This one's a tournament one, actually, to do with, that's a gender equality highlight. So they're right here, and I just encourage you to have a look. And, you know, if you want to look beyond Sweden, just click all countries. Yeah. Maybe I have... I don't know what's in there. Yeah, there you go. And there are thousands from golf clubs all around the world. So if you're, as scholars, if you're sitting one day in a wet day or a snowy day and scratching your head thinking, I wonder if there's something that I could do, even quite simple projects, that's what this part of our website is designed for. Just dive in, have a look around, take some ideas, and hopefully develop some projects. But Bevan, if you wanted, it might be interesting to create a few, even a couple more Kristianstad highlights that we could put out during Sustainable Golf Week in 2 weeks' time.
I think with Per's help, we would have quite a bit of information.
Yeah, well, what we can do during Sustainable Golf Week is we'll do a nice little feature. You know, there's going to be a small press release about this event, about this scholars workshop. Actually, which will, I don't see why it shouldn't list the names of the scholars, because there's got to be something in it for you. And then we could do that with a few Kristianstad highlights attached to it, Bevan.
Absolutely.
And if any...
Can I just say that for me, you know, one of the wonderful things at Kristianstad's is the fact that they have 2 golf courses that are totally different and give a very different golfing experience. And yes, you can say that one is very environmentally focused and the other one is more, you know, let's say a little bit more high intensity in terms of maintenance. But I think it's that in itself, for me, when I walk around both golf courses, it's just a really good, diverse experience that the golf club offers. And for me, that's quite rare, and something maybe that more should be made of.
Good point, Dean. I'm just using the power of technology to...
Fantastic.
Plus the fact that I've never been to Kristianstad, so this is for my own benefit. Yeah, look at that. Nice bit of land on the edge of the town with a good bit of biodiversity. And what's, Bevan, what's this across to the left here? What kind of land is that?
It's just arable land.
Yeah, look at that. Haven for biodiversity.
Yeah.
Anyway, if you've got any highlights, Bevan, that would be great. We can promote them during Sustainable Golf Week and ask the students, the scholars, if they would like to be listed in the press release. It would be nice.
There's a lot of work that the students have been doing, and they've set up their own environmental committee led by Bianca, where they've all been given certain tasks to do by Bianca.
Awesome.
Of which are things like, you know, bird boxes, looking at our water quality and fishes, and looking at environmental zones we can have on the golf course. And what else, Bianca? Carbon footprint.
Carbon footprint, carbon sequestration, insect hotels, sandy patch areas for the insects and the biodiversity. Yeah.
Wow. Awesome. That's fantastic. Kelli is going to come through and talk about the on-course program and how it can help calculate the carbon emissions and the sequestration for a golf course. So there is a tool that does that for you, which Kelli will talk about in the next session, if that's helpful. I'm just going to cut back to this and then we'll stop for a quick chat. So please do go to that website and have a look at those highlights. And I think I mentioned this, so there are definitely some, like, you know, fundamentals of sustainable golf: integrated turf management, naturalization, you know, really getting on top of water, energy, materials, and then have some sort of community engagement plan beyond playing golf. What other things can you add to that? And, you know, that those things will drive your sort of sustainability performance and also tap into your business performance. And I think, you know, we've spoken a lot about sustainability so far, but this is about good business. This is about operating as efficiently as possible, cutting out all waste, not just waste materials, but wasteful, you know, expenditure and wasteful use of time. It is absolutely about knocking the landscape quality out of the park. It's about making your golf course beautiful and memorable, not just having wildlife in it. It is about you being recognized and valued and actively supported in the local community. So when people in the community think, who can we partner with? Who could we sponsor? Where could we showcase something? They think about the golf club. And it's about internal, it's about you as course managers being the next generation of course managers, but also in time, give it another 20, 30 years, you'll be handing off to the next generation of greenkeepers. So it's about you buying into this and feeling, you know, bought into being part of something bigger. I mean, managing a golf course is big enough. It's a great thing to do. It's a great career. All that health and well-being and happiness and social interaction that you are responsible for creating, all that good time in nature that people have, you are delivering to a huge point. But you're also part of something, you can be part of something even bigger than that. So quick questions and then we'll stop for a cup of tea. What do you think, what are the big priorities for you in terms of practical things that golf clubs need to be thinking about?
Jonathan, Alan here. I have a quick question for you. Obviously, you're dealing with a lot of golf clubs in a lot of different countries. How many of the golf clubs are actually holding some sort of open events where they invite local community, not just the members of the golf club, but local community down, so that the head greenkeeper or the golf manager can actually show them things that they're doing on the golf course or within the golf club itself in regards to sustainability?
Yeah, more and more. I mean, we see it through the highlights that come in, Alan, and we know it from, you know, our contact with clubs. We've had requests for ideas, like what sort of things can we do and how can we structure like an afternoon or a 2-hour session. But there's definitely more happening. And quite often it's greenkeeper led, or it's a really good point of collaboration between the greenkeeper and the general manager. You know, how can we create a list of like community organizations, maybe some local businesses, and target them and invite them to the club, and then tell them about what the club is, what the club does, you know, just kind of wrap what we've been talking about today up in the general description, show them around the course, describe the wildlife and the, you know, the responsibility and the commitment that the club has, and open that up to some key organizations, key businesses, and then like an open invite into like residents and things. Sometimes it's a great partnership builder with volunteers within the club. So, you know, people can move around and they can meet some of like the Greens Committee, or Bianca can basically run the whole show. So yeah, it's definitely happening more and more often. And every time we hear about it happening, the clubs have got nothing but good things to say about it. You know, 20 years ago, people would say, oh, we can't do that, it's just a risk. We don't want to open up that Pandora's box. Those were exactly the sort of phrases that we used to hear. Never hear that anymore.
Okay.
Or very rarely. So, all right.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm talking because I live in a country, Croatia, that unfortunately the environmental agency has a very bad perception of golf, even though they only have 4 golf courses in Croatia, and trying to change their perspective. But the head greenkeepers, exactly what you say, they don't want to invite these people along and show them this is what we're actually doing to actually help the environment rather than.
So maybe this time next year for Sustainable Golf Week 2023, all 4 courses in Croatia we can help run something concurrently across all 4 courses around golf, nature, community, and climate action.
That would be a good idea.
It's not easy. I know it's definitely not easy when it's one greenkeeper in one club and they feel isolated. You know, Dean, you know, this is also about creating a culture across greenkeeping that, you know, it's okay to talk about what you do. For a long time, Bevan, I don't know if this might chime with you, for a long time, greenkeepers were terrified of talking about environmental issues because they used chemicals.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I think that's changing, and we need to do as much as we all can to help that culture change, because it's not sustainable for greenkeepers to say nothing about sustainability. And so we need to give greenkeepers as much support as possible to go out and talk about their commitment, their action, and their value. And yes, you still use some chemicals from time to time.
If you look at in my career, the difference now from when I started is that it's a huge difference with the amount of chemicals used. A reduction in chemicals, absolutely, but the amount of greenkeepers actually use today is very, very minimal.
Yeah.
When we used to spray, you know, in the old days, you know, once a month just because you had them. Now you only spray as and when required, you know.
Yeah, yeah. There's a good message. Go back to the 7 key messages. I'm going to call it that. The 7 key messages from the FEGGA scholars to reach golfers. yeah, I'd be interested. Maybe one or two of them can be about just what you said there, Bevan, about the approach to turf management. That's obviously the biggest one, is how a greenkeeper is managing their precious turf legally and responsibly to provide great year-round playing surfaces, or words to that effect. Right, I want to hear from some students. It's been too quiet. So what do you think of some of those priorities outlined? What are the most important things? Here's a question I really want to hear somebody answer. What are you most concerned about that we don't have solutions for? All right, Joseph.
Great. I'm most concerned about energy independence, because a lot of golf courses can't afford to do that. Of course, water management, water is scarce, but every golf course should be improving in those two areas specifically, because I think they represent the future of golf course. So energy and water.
All right. Before I comment, anybody else? What's keeping you awake at night? And it's got to be about greenkeeping.
The lack of sand. One of the biggest problems in the future will be sand for golf courses.
Yeah.
A question, but I'm Bianca. Probably not relevant to what you just asked, but I've been thinking about it now. The energy that we need and for the golf courses, and I know lots of places are putting solar panels on the roofs and different areas, but if you're thinking as a golf course to create a solar park, I know that's a large area that you need to be clearing of natural habitat. So what would you do to replace that somewhere else, transpose it to a different area, or what is the consequences of that? If that's that makes sense.
Yeah, good. That's a really good point. Really good question. All right. Any other concerns? Then we'll try and pick off a couple of these.
Yeah, I'm Pepe, and I agree with Joseph in the water use. I came for a dry city where it's not usual the rain, and water is a big resource we can spend. And I see the difference from where I was working in my city and here. Yeah, they're trying to change this year and make it things, but it's still something all the golf courses should start thinking about how to use it and how to save water.
Yeah. On the water one, do any of you think that there is room for significant reductions in turf in irrigated area on golf courses?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, I'm not trying to be too controversial here, anybody, but so are we irrigating? This is a horrible generalization as well. Are we irrigating more than we need to? Could
yes.
we? Yeah. Right.
I
What
think
what type of area? What types of areas?
More or less all areas, because it's not just because of greenkeepers, it's because of irrigation systems which are set by default by manufacturers. Also, we should use instruments which measure soil moisture, so we know when it's too much water, not guessing. And we do use that here with POGO instruments. And of course, education about water is important. And you can see when some parts of the golf course are oversaturated with water.
Okay. If I'm going to really, was that Joseph there?
Yes.
All right. Well, you stuck your head up, so I'm going to ask you a horrible question. If you, Joseph, you were a golf course in South Central Europe and you went to a course where the system, the timing was off, the coverage was off, there was no soil moisture testing, and there were saturated areas, what do you do?
Start from the beginning or start from the irrigation system itself, then educate the staff.
Nice. All right, so we've got water as a concern. I would be, I don't know what Bevan, Dean, Alan, like we're the sort of oldest heads on this call. I would say water is a big concern, like in terms of not having the solutions that we're probably going to need. And we saw that with France, actually, with the regulation that in certain provinces in France last month were zero water on some courses, and there was some allowance for greens in some other provinces, but it was very, very restrictive in certain provinces in southern France. Would you agree with the view on water there?
Jonathan, for me, I would say that, and this is my personal view, this is not a FEGGA view, this is a personal view. My personal view is that I don't think we irrigate too much, but I think that we irrigate too many areas in golf. Going back to my own golf club where I play golf, my son is a course manager there, and we have discussions about if he could irrigate what he wanted, he probably would irrigate more than I would irrigate, because at the moment we irrigate greens and we irrigate some tees, and whilst I would agree that we'd irrigate tees, I wouldn't go any further. And I think there are a lot of clubs in different parts of the world that don't need to irrigate fairways to actually make the golfing experience more enjoyable. And I think that, for me, is a real key. It still doesn't fit right to me, because you don't need to have green fairways to enjoy golf. But that's a personal opinion. And I think if you look at parts of Northern Europe, I think there are a lot that fit within that regime. And maybe that's another question. You look at Kristianstad as well, because you've got one golf course that irrigates fairways and then the other golf course you don't. And be interesting if you did a poll of whether that killed the experience of the golfer. And again, I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but they're questions that we need to kind of really not be afraid to ask now and discuss, because I think, and we made this point in our recent discussions about this pesticide directive, and one of the things that I said to all our members is that if we think pesticides are going to be challenging, then wait till the EU really gets stuck into water, because they will do. And people say, yeah, but they already are. And no, they're not yet. Yeah. They might be starting it, but they've not put their foot down to the floor yet. And when they do, then we're going to be on the back foot, just like we have been with pesticides, because in the end, we become part of the decision rather than we become the result of the decision rather than being part of the decision. And I think that's where golf can help itself somewhat, not bury its head in the sand and just think, well, we should be allowed to do this and should be allowed to do that. That's not the case. So yeah, I have pretty strong views about that.
Yeah,
I can jump in here as well. I think Dean's absolutely right. I think for those golf clubs and owners of golf clubs or resorts or that do irrigate, I think we need to have the technology that measures soil moisture levels, so we water responsibly. Because most golf courses do have some sort of moisture meter. We have the Pogo here, which we have Bianca going around every day of the week testing the greens so we can water them what they need to. But we've got 140 hectares here, of which a good 50 of them are watered. And without a visual analysis, how do we know that we're watering responsibly? So then we've had certain meetings with certain other companies that put moisture meters in the soil, but the cost of these are enormous. So I agree with Josip that, do we overwater golf courses? I think we probably do. In the last 3 years, we've had FEGGA students, we've had 3 individuals testing greens on the one course, and we've saved a considerable amount of water. And this year, since the Pogo is here, and Bianca's doing a great job, we're saving up to 30 cubic a day just on greens on the one course. And if we can take that data, which we're getting from the greens, onto 18 fairways on the one course, you imagine the amount we can save.
Yes.
It's just how we go from going around testing a golf green that's 600 square meters 20 times onto a fairway that's 1.5 hectares. How do we get there, and what technology do we use? That's the greatest question from me.
Yeah.
Hi, Bevan. There is actual technology that you can use other than the soil moisture sensors. Drones these days have very high definition cameras that can actually read areas and give you actually readings of moisture within your fairways and roughs. And yeah, it's a bit of an expense because these drones can cost a lot of money, but you can actually run them. You don't actually need to have someone actually come in and run them for you. Once you actually buy these drones, then you can actually check them yourself on a weekly basis or a daily basis if you want, and you can set it to actually run over certain fairways each day. If you know that one is a problem, you can set it to run over it every day. But I think something Dean actually said, it's down to actual golfers' perception. And a lot of the problem from my perspective, and this is a personal belief, is that when they watch golf on TV, everything's green and they expect the same experience. Where, I mean, even if you look at the British Open, for example, there's a lot of cases where in the past few years, the golf courses have actually been a lot greener than they used to be. It used to be the links courses were brown. The only thing that was actually relatively green was the golf green itself. Now it's different. It's just the way they want to present the golf course.
Yeah. Well, good point, Alan. So that brings us back to the educating golfers, and that is a piece of work that definitely feels like it needs to be done. I think it would be, so just on the water point, we see a lot of good examples of bits of the water story kind of coming through in highlights and sort of like, anecdotes and things like that, industry articles. But it would be really interesting to see, I think, some case studies, some examples of where from the sourcing of the water to the area of irrigated coverage to the technology that delivers it, the irrigation system and the monitoring that goes around that, and right through to the education and engagement of golfers. Like, that's where the future of water is going to, on golf course, is going to lie. It's not one of those things happening. It's going to require all of it. So some sort of blend of sourcing in many, many locations where it's a single source at the minute, areas that are reduced. And interestingly, when the drought orders came in California 5 years ago, and the Californian government started to say, we'll give you a rebate for every square foot of turf, some golf courses were finding 26 plus acres of turf that suddenly didn't need to be irrigated in order to get a payment from the government and retain water for the rest of their golf course. So almost overnight, thousands of acres of golf courses that had been irrigated suddenly didn't need to be irrigated. So yeah. it would be interesting, I think, to see case studies of all of like a golf club doing all of those things, because it's going to take that sort of level of solutions. And then I wanted to quickly jump back to Bianca's point about solar, because it's a big issue about energy independence. And there are certainly more and more golf clubs looking at, you know, pieces of land that they have available and whether they can build solar parks there. And then there's definitely a knock-on effect with the ecology. In a lot of circumstances, you've got to be very careful with the ecology and the ecological impact of that. I did see something which should dig out and share, which was about kind of looking at permaculture principles for solar parks and how land, there was ways to design the solar installations in a way that also allowed plants and vegetation, other things to grow underneath. I think it was linked to the height of the solar panels off the ground, so that the ground underneath was still getting access to sufficient levels of light. It's kind of what they do with, I mean, olive groves and other, you know, forms of permaculture. So you've got something effectively growing a canopy, and then how do you use the sub canopy and things like that. So people have been thinking about that, Bianca, but I'll try and dig out. If you Google permaculture and solar parks, you might get some of that kind of thinking. Right, I just conscious of time, and also
can I ask one question, please?
Yeah.
It's really with regard to carbon compromising, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And you raised some, I think, some really, really good things with regard to what golf clubs are doing, not just what they can, but what they are doing. And kind of the result being it really makes them more aware of things that they are doing that they don't necessarily need to do, but things that they can do to make that compromise. And I think that for me, one of the key things there is sometimes golf clubs try to find the silver bullet instead of actually working towards, if you like, the silver bullet, like, you know, little steps are the most maybe sustainable long-term goal sets in the you know, in the end. So I think that's a really, really good thing. But one of the things that really irritates me, and I just wondered what your views are, and that is when it comes to individuals, because we see a lot of people that do things and then they do other things to make that carbon compromise. And that for me at times doesn't sit right with me, because that's kind of, I can do this and I can afford to do this, so I will do it, but I will pay then to offset my carbon footprint, which makes it okay. Well, in my eyes, that doesn't make it okay, because you made the point the very beginning on the first presentation, was that sometimes we need to question, do we actually need to buy that? And there's no difference in my mind. It might be a lot bigger. So you probably know where I'm going with this, really, you know, Mr. McElroy, and I hope you helped him maybe see the bigger picture. But he can do things, he can buy things, but that for me doesn't make it right. It makes it wrong.
Whoa, like a bit of controversy on the FEGGA scholars session. This is good. This is exactly.
And this is not, and Jonathan, this is not a criticism of you or GEO.
No, not at all.
Because at the end of the day, it's great that somebody like came to you and maybe you could steer that person in the right direction and make them think about things in a bigger scheme way. But for me, I think that the two things there, one, the golf course and it being so productive, and you see so many highlights on your website that are so good, and then there's the other side of it, that, and it's not just golf, there's other people from all the walks of life, don't they? And and for me, that's like, no, that's not right. So
it's a good, no, Dean, it's a great question, and I'm going to take a minute to answer it, because I think it's like, for the students and the scholars, there's a couple of things that you've mentioned there that are maybe worth explaining a bit. I mean, first of all, on the golf club side of carbon footprinting and carbon reductions, I couldn't agree more. There are no silver bullets. So don't sit around waiting for a silver bullet and to find a carbon neutral silver bullet. There aren't any. Dean is absolutely right. It's about practical things that you can do. One of the interesting things about a carbon footprint for your golf club is that it helps you see things differently. So, and what I mean by that is, your carbon footprints usually come in like various scopes. So they're the emissions that are most directly owned and attributable to you as a golf club. So scope 1 emissions will have certain things like direct energy and things like that that are fundamentally important. Scope 2 will move into some of the other things that you consume and some of the waste that you generate and the emissions that come from your waste. And then scope 3 is a whole world of stuff that you consume and your travel and transportation for your club, which none of that is easy to reduce. So it's about understanding where the emissions are coming from, how directly you can control them, and then trying to do something about it. So I just use that as a chance to explain a little bit about carbon. Kelli will touch on this in a second as well. And also that Dean's principle is absolutely right. And then Dean, the thing that you're talking about with players is like at the other end of the spectrum a bit. They have a couple of things that they need to do in order to function as professional golfers. Or, I mean, even people who are negotiating in the climate summits that travel the world by commercial airline are emitting more than they need to, but their job is to do something. So I think the question is, what counts as unavoidable emissions? So what were Rory's unavoidable emissions? What are my unavoidable emissions? What are
mine?
Yeah, what are Kristianstad's unavoidable emissions? We all have unavoidable. We're doing them right now.
Yes.
You know, we could have had not a webinar and saved digital emissions, but we've got unavoidable emissions.
Yeah.
So, you know, for certain players, their unavoidable emissions are the way that are their professional travel for them and their entourage, their caddy and so on, and the way that they carry out that travel. And so the question then is, you know, is that justifiable as an unavoidable emission? And they could let those unavoidable emissions drift off, or they could do something about it. And some people are choosing to do something about it. And what we are definitely educating in that process, but we're also making sure that when they do something about their unavoidable emissions, it's the best thing that they can do about it. And it's not a pretend offset, or, you know, it's as solid as it can be. But it's a really good point. The principle is, what are our unavoidable emissions and how legitimate are they? And if they're unavoidable and they're legitimately unavoidable, and that person wants to offset them, that offset is an additionally good thing that they're doing, because we've all got those unavoidable emissions, right? I'm really conscious of time.
Yeah.
And we've got one more discussion right at the very end. So Bevan, I was going to propose that we stop for 10 minutes.
Okay.
Quick drink, comfort break, and then Kelli, who has joined, who is in the office in North Berwick here. So Kelli, would you like to introduce yourself? On screen, you've got Alan, who you know, Dean, who you very know. You can see Bevan at the back of the room there. And then we have 7 of this year's FEGGA scholars, which Bevan puts through their paces up at Kristianstad's golf club.
Fantastic. I'm looking forward to hearing what questions you have for me when I get done. You have very good questions and good insights. It's nice to see people who are super engaged.
Yeah, yeah. So when we come back, we're going to, Kelly's going to talk about some of those things. Joseph, you mentioned about ranking, rating, certification.
Yes.
Bianca, you're interested in carbon accounting. So we're going to talk through about some of the things that are currently available to greenkeepers. And then we also want to hear your views on, if there's not something currently available, what would you like as you go through the next 20 or 30 years of your greenkeeping career? What help would you like? Leave it at that, and we'll come back in, let's say 4:10.
Okay.
Nice. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Okay.
I think the word.
You look very serious there, Jonathan. You look like a man that just lost his lottery ticket.
Just a couple of emails I didn't like.
Oh, I get at least 10 of those a day.
Yeah, pensive. All right, everybody, I think that's us all back, is it? Yeah, looks good.
Yeah.
All right, hand over to Kelly for the final push, and then we'll move into discussion. Over to you, Kelly.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Hang on a minute. We've got a pretty bad echo. I think you're going to have to turn it all the way off, Jonathan. No. Okay. Anyway, thanks. I joined a bit early because I just wanted to tune in and kind of see who I was going to be talking to. And it sounds like you guys are, you know, your stuff. And it's a great program that you've all been participating in. So hopefully what my little portion of this is going to be, and we'll keep it short and fast so that we can ask more questions and hear more of your thoughts and ideas. But we're going to go through kind of the support and recognition pieces of the program. Hold on one second.
You put your screen on.
Can you not see it?
Your camera. Then people can see you.
Oh, okay. Great. Sorry, I had my camera off. It's a bit rude when you're presenting. So anyway, we'll go through the kind of the support and recognition that's available, both from Geo Foundation for Sustainable Sport, but also with lots of other people around. So now I'm a bit confused as to whether I have shared my screen or not. Yes.
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, good. All right. So we'll fire away so we can get us back on track. Basically on the support side of things, I mean, obviously you're there getting wonderful educational opportunity, but there are all kinds of other things that you'll use throughout, you know, all of your career. And particularly in sustainability, it runs the full spectrum. So you have research and science, so lots of different scientific research things going on to solve very specific things, but also to look at some of the bigger picture things. Like, for example, if you think about it, soil moisture meters didn't used to exist, now they do. And there's all kinds of different things, whether it's, you know, how do you solve for a certain pest when you can't use the pesticide that you wanted to use, those kinds of things. So lots of different research and science projects available. Education, advisory services, guideline documents, case studies, and highlights, and programs and tools. And we'll just touch on a few of those. On the research side of things, this is just, I mean, most of you will, excuse me, most of you will have heard of STURF, the Scandinavian Turfgrass Research. Those are the kind of places that you can turn to find very specific things. I think from time to time, FEGGA also has research projects that you put to the highlight, or Golf Course 2030. So there's different people out there doing research as academics, federations, etc. So it's a good place to when you need to dive deep into a subject. There's also guidance documents. This is obviously you're familiar with this website, the FEGGA site, and from time to time, obviously, you know, things get added to that provide guideline documents. And there are lots of other places that you can find those types of guidance things, and more on sustainability and climate action all the time. Jonathan did a nice tour of the Sustainable Golf highlights earlier, which is the platform on sustainable.golf that allows you to share or find different ideas and examples. And this is just this kind of fun, but really helpful crowdsourced list of ideas and practical actions that people are taking. And I think Jonathan showed you the filters, etc., so you can change by what you're looking for. I don't remember if you mentioned you can also create the highlight in your own language, and then somebody can toggle back and forth if they want to read it in English. But that's kind of a nice way to make it more meaningful in your own location and to yourself. So that's the highlights tool. And then one of the big sort of packaged programs is On Course. And that's something that has been built with wide scale collaboration throughout the industry over the last 10 years. So this is version 5 of the web app. And it is a way to, I think, what we've been trying to do, and what we hear we've done, is to make everything that you guys have been talking about on this call, this big wide picture, to narrow it down into the most practical steps to take, so that, you know, if you're looking to do a self-assessment of, you know, are we sustainable on our golf course? If you don't really know what all defines sustainability, it's kind of hard to answer that. So this is a series of checklists to go through to see if you're using the best practices. And they're, you know, and they're organized according to the highest priority. And then also a place for you to track your key annual data, which is going to help with tracking trends and performances and see for yourself how you're doing. So the tool is called On Course. It's free for anybody to use anywhere in the world. It's also translated in 11 different languages. So chances are you probably have your language represented. But it also is customized for the country. So if you're a Swedish-speaking greenkeeper working in Croatia, you can make those adjustments as well. So we don't actually call it Geo On Course. It's just called On Course. It's a tool for the industry to use, and we've tried to make it easy and adaptable for different parts of the world. This is just giving you a quick snapshot of the dashboard. You can see you can upload a photo of your golf course, your logo, etc. And kind of across the main three things that you might ask yourself: are we sustainable? So how do I do a self-assessment and a review? How can we improve? And what can we say? So this is the reports and recognition piece of it. And this is the part of a lot of communication tools. I think Jonathan also mentioned it's really important if we're trying to change the image and reputation of the sport and get people to understand how, you know, what good stewards greenkeepers actually are, then it's important also to communicate about that. Also taps into the social media on sustainable.golf. Again, part of the tell your story, share how good you're doing. How well you're doing, and then also the highlights, which this plugs back into the highlights tool that Jonathan showed you before. So 3 basic sections of the program. We'll start with, are we sustainable, which is where the bulk of things lives. And it's split out, as I mentioned, into best practices and annual data. So the best practices part you fill out once, and that's those checklists. You can go back every year and top up if you add new things. It's split out across the agenda that Jonathan also shared: nature, resources, and community. There's not a 4th one for climate action because it's kind of bound up in here. So there's practices within it that will help you with your carbon emissions or your carbon sequestration, but it's not a separate agenda at this level. So I can go in and edit against checklists throughout here one time and then top up, and then annual data, of course, you do every year. So if we look, this is just looking at the resources section of the practices, and water, energy, materials. So 2 things that were mentioned as concerns earlier. Within water, you're looking to reduce need, to become more efficient, and to source responsibly. So where you're getting your water from. On materials, reduce need, purchase responsibly, and reuse and recycle. So each one of the main sections, nature, resources, and community, is divided into 3 easy subsections. Again, just trying to make a kind of a complex thing appear fairly simple on the screen. This one looks a little bit busier, but that's because it's separated out by golf course and grounds, clubhouse, and maintenance facility. Not all of the sections are, but in this case, you can imagine that what they're doing for efficiency in the clubhouse, you don't want to answer for. That'll be somebody else's job. So we split that out in this particular page. It's pretty easy to navigate around. You can use these things, or you can use the side menu over here. Once I'm down into the best practices, it just looks like this, a series of checklists. So this is asking for efficiency on my golf course around water application. These are some of the best practices that you should be doing if you're trying to be sustainable. So providing staff training on efficient irrigation practices. Actually, education was, I believe, one of the things that Joseph mentioned. Adjust your sprinkler heads to water playing surfaces only. That was also mentioned. Conduct regular irrigation performance audits. Use modern sprinkler heads. conduct a catch can test and calculate distribution uniformity, syringe application, and water in the evenings or at night. So you can see they get kind of sort of progressively less important or less obvious things to do. But the main thing to notice in each one of these things is if there's a green flag on it, then that's going to be one of the most essential things to do. And those are also the things that are required if you want to become certified. So that's that international mark of credible, sustainable golf. And instead of giving you a document that says, here's all the criteria you must meet, it's all just baked into this program. So as you're going through the practices, if it has a green flag on it, that's one of those things that you need to be able to tick yes to in order to be certified. If we move again into the annual data, this is an account that's obviously, well, it's a demo account, but you can imagine that over time, each year you create a new year, and you would be aiming to put in all of the data each year. And when you do, you get nice reports and trends and observations back. But I'll just give you a snapshot of what the, no, I won't. Within the data section, the questions are very similar to what you saw before as checklists. The only difference is that you'll be typing in numbers. So what's your water consumption, fertilizer use, amount of land, there's certain types of habitats versus turf, amount of irrigation, turf irrigated, et cetera. And obviously there's a million things that you could answer data-wise, and we've worked hard to boil it down to just what's essential in terms of being able to say, those are the best things to track around sustainability, and also the things that we need to calculate the carbon footprint. So that's basically what the app looks like, what OnCourse looks like. And some people take months and months and months to fill that out. Other people take a week to fill that out. It kind of just depends on, really it just depends on how your record keeping is. That's one of the main differences. So if you have the data to hand, it's easy. If you need to go and get the energy bills from somebody else, et cetera, it can take a bit longer, but it's typically what we hear is that it's not really all that scary. And particularly for younger people who are adept with computers, it's a quick process. So the next section I was going to talk about is just tracking and analysis. So if you've put all of that into OnCourse, what do you get back? So you actually get back quite a lot. There is something called a sustainability scorecard, which includes your carbon footprint. And once you put everything in, you can request that, and we prepare that for you. That does have a small cost to it. It's 350 euros per year, but there are also packages available. And if you're getting certified, then it's an even better package. But with that, we're actually reviewing all of the data that was put in, putting it back into a 17-page report that's all formatted. And each year, you can see this one has 3 years of data. So each year we add on the additional data going backwards so that you can start to see trends. So not only do you see these data tables around the key things that you would be looking to track, and some of them are calculations that you wouldn't necessarily have to hand. So we've done some additional calculation, particularly obviously around climate. But you get these charts in the report, not looking like that, each in their own section. But then you also get a lot of, you can see all the different trends, which looks pretty professional for somebody to be able to turn around and say to a committee or a manager. Imagine putting some of this up on screen to say, this is what we've been up to. And even to point out areas where you might need to improve to help try to get more resources, or to show where you have used fewer resources and therefore saved money. So they're good reports. They also include the carbon footprint, which I think Jonathan mentioned. So there's 3 pages of carbon reporting in the actual report, and it shows you the breakdown of where your emissions are coming from. It highlights your hotspots, so where you would probably be best to look to improve. And it also looks at your carbon sequestration or storage. So because you have a living landscape, it's not just emitting carbon through your operations, but you're also probably storing some. If you have a forest attached, then you're in really good shape. But even if you just have fairly new turf or areas of habitat, you're storing some carbon. So, you know, we're providing an accounting for you for both of those things, as well as a series of recommendations for how you can improve in the next year. And again, that's all packaged up in that same scorecard and carbon footprint that you can request. And to Dean's point, there is also a way that a club can offset their carbon if they aren't able to reduce. You need to be looking at reducing every year because it's this continual journey. But if you do get to a situation where the golf facility that you work for wants to take that extra step and offset, then we also provide that credible offsetting package for golf facilities. But it is also really important to make sure that it's a continual, let me see how, you know, if I could keep doing things to move this in the right direction. So that's the scorecard that comes with On Course, or can be packaged up as On Course. And that package also includes an infographics kit. So within your report, not only do you get the tables and the charts, but we also create these different infographics for you. You get them all as separate tiles and as blocks in the report and also in a file separately so that they can be shared on social media. So these are, you know, that we had 33 production and water use in 2018. We reduced electricity use in the last 2 years. 142,000 hours were spent in nature since 2020. 14% of all our members are juniors. We had a 15% reduction in top dressing in the last 3 years. So we only put positive things in these because we want these to be things that you're really proud of sharing. The report might highlight some areas for improvement, but these are really meant to help communicate. So that infographics kit comes with that as well. And then I think there was a question as well about recognition. So that's the other piece of the puzzle. There's lots of different ways to get recognition for the good work that you guys do. And one of them would be local and regional awards, which many countries have, or local communities might have a sustainability award that had nothing to do with golf, but that you might apply for. There's industry awards. That could be, you know, a golf association, or Myacto has a big sustainability award that we work on, which so that if you're part of a golf facility that brings in tourism, that might be one to look at. And then there's an international certification for sustainable golf, which most people know as geo-certified. And it is an international mark. These are down here, not just as examples, but Fair Trade, Rainforest Alliance, Marine Stewardship Council, all things that labels that you've seen before. And you've seen them because they're very credible and respected. And there's actually a body called ISEAL. They are kind of like the people that certify the certifiers. And you have to work really hard in order to show that you are code compliant with the ISEAL Alliance. So there are 25 eco labels in the world that have that. It might be 26 now. But there are some of these top ones, and geo-certified is code compliant through the ISEAL Alliance. So what that means to us is it's extra hard work, but something that we're actually really happy to do, because what it means for you is that when you talk about this certification, either to try to sell it internally because you want to do it, or to showcase it externally, it's something you know you can be really confident about. So within the sustainability space, there's all the talk about greenwashing, et cetera. And so we kind of take the extra step to make sure that the golf industry has something that they know is that solid. So that certification, every single thing that you need is in On Course. So all you need to do is complete On Course, including make sure you have all the green flags ticked off, and you've put in the 1 year's data in the first year. And then we do a review of that for you. And if it all looks good, we might have some queries. If it looks good, then we appoint what's called a verifier. So that is an independent third-party person who comes out to visit the golf course. It's usually a really positive visit. They walk around with you. And then they make a recommendation back to us, which we review, and then we can award certification. And all of that is really just a foundation for, well, it's not just a foundation for communications, it's also helping you to spot areas where you can improve your performance, but it's the foundation for good, solid communications. So I know Jonathan showed you the website, sustainable.golf, which is just a platform for everybody who's in the community around sustainable golf to come and find things out or share things. And you get everybody who's on course gets a page on the directory. So you'd be able to type in a country to see who was involved, or type in by the name, and then you automatically have your own built-in sustainability webpage, and it includes any highlights that you've created. So without going to any web developers or paying any additional money, there's a sustainability page that you can plug into your website or share on social media. This is just a couple examples of some of the social media. You might want to jot down @sustainablegolf and #4sustainable which are a couple of the social media tags that we use. There's also a YouTube channel and a monthly newsletter. So everybody who is involved in On-Course gets the newsletter, or if you just at the bottom of the website join. And then this year, I guess, yeah, maybe just this year, we even through a partnership with Sky Sports have been trying to make sure that any club that is hosting an event, we're also feeding information into Sky Sports. And this is part of our way of helping with some of the things you touched on earlier about education of the golfers, and just general perspective and awareness among golfers around sustainability being a good thing. It doesn't go into detail around you can't always have green grass, but it is actually starting to raise awareness, and most people really like seeing that. Makes them feel good to be part of the industry when they see that on television on the weekends. And there's another way to recognize individuals, which is called a Sustainable Golf Champion. So if you're really involved in the programs over a few years, then we will reach out to you and really want to be able to recognize people who are kind of leading the way, pioneers. So that's a professional player, greenkeeper, club manager, there's a golf course architect. So there's kind of a range of ways that you can become a champion, and there's more about that on the website. And probably we have a growing number of professional players, but Suzanne Pedersen is one that you may all know from her upcoming Solheim captaincy and her sinking the last putt on the winning putt on the Solheim Cup when she played last time. Right, so I told you I'd do a little power tour. This is more of a wrap up and a bit of an invitation, I guess. I know Jonathan mentioned the point of impact earlier and the fact that you guys are younger in your careers, but this is a super important decade. And, it's people like you guys that we're excited about, because we're here to help you guys embrace stuff and look good while doing it and do the right thing. So hopefully this has kind of forged a good connection, and we're doing everything we can to kind of reach out across the industry and across the world to help golf engage as much as they can during this important time. And I think now we get to the fun part where I get to stop talking and you guys can ask questions.
All right.
Yes, sure.
Thank you, Kelly. All right, so we've got a few questions sort of prepared there, linked to what Kelly was just talking about, support and recognition. What is most helpful to you now and, as you go forward? Question about communications. Do you think that golf is doing enough? And if not, why not? What more could we do? And then we're going to close. I'm going to try and get everybody, even those that haven't spoken yet, to pitch in on the final question. So any comments on what Kelly's described in terms of support and recognition that's currently available?
Can I just ask a question, Jonathan and Kelly? Can you clarify to everyone what the app is? Is it available on like iOS, Android, or is it just on the computer?
Yeah, sure. It's a web-based app, so you can use it on your phone or your tablet. It's not an app that you get from the App Store, but it is mobile friendly. So
Okay.
it's built, it's connected to a very large database in the cloud and all of that. So it's quite a robust web application, but it's best used on the computer, just because there's a lot going on. But we do also, there are people who have it on their phones and flip through and add in stuff from time to time. But you, in order to get the app, you go to getoncourse.golf, and then that shows you, that just walks you through signing in and getting an account. And actually we can follow up this with a little kind of moving brochure that talks about lots of different things that I spoke about, and there's links from that to various places where you can find out more.
Okay, thanks.
I have a question about certification, if I may.
Yes, please.
My question is, oh, sorry, we have some problems. It's good. Do you hear me?
Yep.
Great. My question is, how often is the certificate re-reviewed? So if you get one like Kristianstad got in 2015, does that mean they have it forever, or?
No, that's a very good question. Thank you. It is once every 3 years. So at the first time, you need 1 year of data and filling in those practices. And then we review it again. You're supposed to put in your information every year, because when you get to the 3rd year, then we look at all 3 years of data. And then if you continue using it every year, you can move to 5 years in most countries. So the verification visit and the additional cost around that is only once every 3 years and then every 5 years.
Thank you.
I have a question for Kelly and Jonathan. It's like, you say, Jonathan, before that the course should improve the sequestration and reduce the emission of carbon. And I know that a lot of things that a course can do for reduce the carbon emission, but how a course can improve the sequestration?
Yeah, it's a good question. There's not a lot that a course can do that's going to really change the numbers. There are things, you know, planting trees, for example, but that's not radically going to change your sequestration numbers. You want to naturalize as much as you can. So if you have space that's older turf and you turn it into a different type of habitat, that can increase your sequestration. But you're not going to make radical improvements on that in that area.
Okay.
So could you create wetlands? I don't know if man-made wetlands do sequester that
Yep.
well as normal ones.
Yes, you can. Yeah. So when naturalization for me included all that stuff, I wasn't very specific. So there are things absolutely that you can do. You can create a wetland. You can change over some of your habitats. You can plant trees. You could buy some adjacent trees. Okay. So there are things that you can do. My point was just, it's not going to radically change your carbon sequestration, although a wetland actually, if it's a big enough one, would make a dent.
Okay. Just anybody, any comments on, Kelly outlined at the start about how, golf is working on a range of different ways to support greenkeepers, from research to educational content, into tools and programs and knowledge sharing. It's also worth just mentioning, Kelly mentioned the database that's on course. So in certain countries where there are a lot of clubs using the on-course program, we have a lot of very useful data for the industry, where again, the industry has been a little bit weak in gathering sustainability data about land use and water and energy and waste and, you know, fertilizers and so on. So we are gathering that, and that's another service to the industry actually that is derived from on courses, that we can help produce sustainable golf insights and, you know, snapshots of how the industry is performing, and also help represent how well the industry is doing in that. So above and beyond what Kelly outlined there, the things, is there anything that you, what would you like as young course managers? Is there anything above and beyond that that would strike you as being really helpful, other than grants, for example, and being able to give you money for projects, which probably isn't possible at the minute? But what else would you like?
I just want to clarify one thing on the data point, because this comes up a lot. So we don't share anybody's data with their club name on it. So everything that you put into OnCourse is just for you. So when we do those reports, they're anonymized. So no club names are attached to them. That's one of the kind of fear points. So I just thought I would interject quickly to reassure anybody if that was going through your head. So now, what else would you like?
Would it not be a good idea to share that information, so it's not hidden from the public?
Well,
So clubs can decide. So you could, Kristianstad could decide to share as much information as you would like from your scorecards and things like that. So we leave the sharing of club-specific information at the decision of the club. And then the database is full of data from clubs, but it's anonymized. So if we produce something like a, you know, lowest figure, a highest figure, an average or a median range, that type of thing, like let's say for water use from recycled sources, let's say, Bevan, you know, we tend to just do that as a snapshot of golf in Sweden or golf in the Netherlands. So we cluster it in different ways, but we don't tend to publish the name. We don't
ever.
I mean, we could say, I mean, we say in the Netherlands that this data comes from, you know, 70 clubs. So we describe the sample, but we don't put the name to the data. It doesn't seem necessary when publishing industry data, because one of the risks is people sort of fall out with one another and then don't use the system.
But that's also why those infographics that we created are stats, and they do come out of your data, but we just want to leave that up to individual clubs to share.
But if we wanted, I mean, if our plan is to be extremely sustainable in the future and more environmentally friendly than we are, and if we achieve our goals, you know, we would like to share that we've done this, especially with the local authorities, with the water authorities and the environmental agencies and everything else we have.
Yeah, no, take that. That's,
do.
yes, and that is exactly what the scorecards are for, if you want to use them that way. Some people want to, you know, study them for a couple of years before they share it, because they have a lot of ways that they might feel that they want to keep more private until they improve it. Other people, you know, trot that out there to the local authorities to get a grant or approvals or anything. That's what they're there for. And they are bundled up as a report, but you get them in a way that you can also pull it apart and use just certain pieces of it for slides to back up presentations or your own communications, whatever. So definitely share that. Okay. We just don't feel like we feel like it's important for us to say that's your data.
Okay.
I think you're quite right, Kelly, and in a way, it's a fair question, but an unfair question, because actually, looking at the bigger picture, golf needs to share more data, and it's not doing a very good job of that. And that's not your problem. It's golf's problem, because when we use an example again, going back to what we've been collectively working with this pesticide proposed regulation, we've all been giving messages of how good golf's been doing. I mean, Bevan at the very beginning said he clearly uses so little pesticide compared to years ago, and we know that. But actually, wouldn't it be great if we could give some facts that these are real facts? And I know, so that's not your role.
Well, our role is to gather the data, though. So
absolutely.
So this
absolutely.
is yes. So we always say with On Course, there's like two sides of it. So there's the side of it that a club uses, and they get a scorecard and carbon, and it's for them to decide how to share that. But there's the back end of it that is really there for the industry to understand its performance, but also to be in a better position if it needs to put something forward for a regulation. So the more people that we can get giving the industry the information, then we prepare those reports and help you all share them. And that's at an industry level.
Yeah, I mean, we've been trying to push more and more to even greenkeepers, because greenkeepers are equally to blame as anybody in terms of not wanting to share their data. But the reality is, as we spoke earlier, is that when the EU really does get to grips with water, which could have an even bigger impact on golf, it's going to be no good saying we've reduced water, because we need to be factual about what we are actually saying. Because when politicians look at this, all they think is that, well, anybody can say how good they are and what they're doing and what they're not doing. And I think that's, for me, it's another step that we need to make. And I'm not sure how we even get to it, really, to be honest with you.
Well, it's a good question, Dean. We did a little project recently where we said just the water section of On Course. Don't worry about anything else. If push came to shove, how long would it take to fill out the water section? So it's 10 questions that talk about the practices, and it's a few points of data. And on average, it took people a half an hour. That wasn't a huge sample size, wasn't a scientific study, but if the industry got into trouble for the sake of a half an hour once a year, then think about how much potential you would have to use that to your benefit. And the same thing goes with another real example that happened in the UK was the red diesel thing, where they were going to change the taxes. So we had that data. We pulled together overnight for FEGGA and whoever else was looking for it, the data around how much actual diesel was used. And it was a small sample set, but it was enough to help. And all it takes is for people to actually to use something that they get a benefit from through the scorecards and recognition if they choose, but on the backside they're helping the industry. So
I just try and bring this back to, because it's relevant to the future that the scholars are moving into in their careers. So on the one hand, I mean, what you can see there, scholars, is two organizations that are in golf trying to work out this conundrum, right? There is a conundrum, and the conundrum is that we desperately need more information coming from grassroots clubs, data and stories, to champion golf in the future and to give golf the influence that it needs in a world that is becoming more and more pressured. If you don't, as a sector, as a landowner, as as community-based businesses, if we don't have data and stories relating to sustainability in the future, golf's future will be very, very difficult. And that comes down to associations like FEGGA and organizations like GEO working. And I think maybe there's three things. Maybe we're all dependent in this, right? One is that and I'm checking this with you. This is a question for the scholars, right? It feels like it needs the continued energetic advocacy of bodies like FEGGA, your European Greenkeeper Association and Swedish Greenkeeper Association. So the bodies that you look to as great professional greenkeepers, feels to me like they need to keep championing this. They need to keep encouraging you, and they need to keep trying to educate and motivate you to be sustainable course managers, to be at the forefront of this. Organizations like GEO need to listen hard and make the best possible, easiest to use tools. And then from that, we need to talk about it. We need to collectively champion what you are doing locally within your clubs, nationally through national associations, and even internationally with bodies like the EU. The biggest dilemma, the biggest challenge that currently affects all of that is the capacity that the industry has to deliver all of that. So Dean's capacity to advocate, our capacity to build the best solutions, and actually your capacity to find half an hour of your busy days to put in some water data, or to find another half an hour to track your biodiversity data. Like, those kind of things really matter. And I think, so Bevan, I wanted to bring it back to you, because you've actually made the steps at Kristianstad to build the capacity into somebody's job. And that really does matter, because, you know, if we're all trying to do this big issue of sustainability in a few minutes here or there, I mean, I know myself, if somebody asks me to do something that's not part of my daily routine, it's really hard to find it. So we need to build it into our daily routines. And Bevan's created the role of a sustainability manager. He's specified a job description. He's made it somebody's task to really, really explore this and get on top of it in terms of like the monitoring and the communication around it. I think, Dean, that is a great example to the industry, because if we need to do this, but golf clubs don't change something, or we all don't change something, we'll keep doing what we've always done. And 10 years from now, we'll wish we had data, we'll wish we had stories, but we won't have created the culture amongst greenkeepers to enable that to happen. So that was all a question. I really want to hear like almost final words from the scholars. What would you like from people around about you, and what do you see as your role in overcoming and doing some of the things that, as you can see, are slightly frustrating for people who have been around for quite a while? We really want to make this happen and help you make it happen, and then have the data and the stories to tell what golf is doing. So how do you feel about that situation and your role in it as young course managers? Are you frustrated that golf doesn't tell its story well enough? Are you frustrated that we don't have data to go into Brussels and lobby effectively?
Not really, no. I think there's a lot of communication. The person who wants to hear it will hear it and will give information back. The person which is not interested in that will not see it and will not information back. So it's all about individual effort.
Yeah, I think that's a great point about there are those that are interested and those that aren't. Although there's still, just to challenge that slightly, Joseph, we still engage with a lot of club managers and greenkeepers who are very interested, but they don't create a sustainable golf highlight and share it with anybody, even though it only takes literally 7 minutes. How do we explain that one? And how do we do something about that?
Yeah, it's I think it's a little bit different between being interesting for something or for sustainable, and do something for improve in this sustainable. And it's very important to have time and have change a little bit mindset for this, for what you want to do and what you want to change.
Yep, that's a really good point. And some of it is definitely mindset. And somebody mentioned some, changing things every day. It's not, you probably aren't having to do radically different things every day, but it is that mindset that you've all been talking about. And then if you can do something once a year to help the industry by sharing, then that's kind of a win-win, is what I think what the industry is hoping for, is that's that kind of win-win blend. And ultimately, I mean, all of us feel like golf is pretty good. So, you know, yes, of course we can do better and we can track things better and we can get more excited about things, but let's also, you know, get better while also sharing. What were you going to say, Joseph?
I wanted to say, Jonathan, I said they are very interested, but did not apply themselves. That only means actions speak louder than words. And those people are probably not committed to the stuff they are interested in.
Good point.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, I think it's a good idea to have someone that does sustainability, and not just because I don't think as greenkeepers you get much time to do that sustainability. So how can you actually be that sustainable at the end of the day if you don't spend that enough time of doing it? Because half an hour, 7 minutes a day, I don't feel is sufficient enough to be sustainable, especially if you're on a UNESCO site and you're in a biosphere. You're going to need more inputs to deliver a better output. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
No, and that's also that's case specific. I think what we're trying to do is to take examples like the situation that you're in now, where you have a lot of resource behind it, and you are able to do lots of things. So you get to keep doing more and more. And then on the other end of the spectrum, there's, you know, a club who doesn't yet have the resources, but at least if they can have a simple checklist of the things that they should, practices that they have in place. And biodiversity is a good example. Well, obviously, if you're in a site, UNESCO site, you need to do more. But if you just start with a simple understanding of what your notable species are, and if you don't have the time to do that, then, which is highly possible, then put something out to the members to say, does anybody have any experience in this? So it's this kind of balance. So even if you just knew the notable ones, that would be a start, and moving on the journey, because there's so many different types of golf courses that people land in the world. I like your ambition.
Okay, thank you.
I'm just conscious we've run over time. I didn't think we were going to even make the time, but we've run over. So, and it's getting, I know it's 6 o'clock at Kristianstad's. Why don't, Bevan, if I round up with a little bit of a couple of takeaways and bits of homework, and then Dean, maybe you can sort of close things off. And first of all, I mean, thanks for spending, you know, the best part of 3 hours talking about golf and sustainability. I mean, we hope that there's been good sort of education, you know, just around that big picture and what's happening, how it affects golf, and also some of the things that are ready to use now. I mean, it'd be fantastic if Kristianstad's and if you all, you know, were leaders in using some of those tools and solutions, but also bear in mind the door's always open. If you come up with some idea or innovation or something that you think could accelerate the movement in golf and sustainability, because it is going to be essential to the game, and it's also going to be really important to your profession as greenkeepers in the years ahead. The bits of homework I had were, one, have a go at creating a golfer message each. Really fascinating to see what you would say in terms of tempering golfers' opinions, like just cooling them down slightly. Two would be, how about identifying and suggesting to Bevan and then creating a sustainable golf highlight each for Kristianstad's. That would be another 7 on Kristianstad's webpage, and we could put those out during Sustainable Golf Week. Third, we're going to send over some more information on course and how that works. And I think fourthly, rather than asking you now to summarize how you would describe the golf course of 2035, why don't you have a go at writing it down in a sentence?
Maybe yes, or top 3 changes or something like that. Easy, not an essay.
No, not an essay, one sentence. What's the golf course of 2035 look like?
Then I have,
Not an easy task, that one. I wouldn't even know where to start, to be honest, but it'd just be interesting to see how you came at it. And then we would love to talk more about this during Sustainable Golf Week in 2 weeks' time, that you all sat through 3 hours of sustainability right to the end. That should be in the press release. And just the fact that, you know, you symbolize a group of people that fundamentally this is all about in terms of golf, but also bigger things.
I had another request from our comms guys. They would like to know if you guys would mind participating or being part of a video that we're putting together for Sustainable Golf Week. So it'll have everybody from professional players, people all around the world saying at one part of it, I'm Sustainable Golf. And usually they're individuals, but we thought it might be interesting to have the group of you together in a classroom setting. And then at the bottom of it, instead of saying, you know, I'm Joe from whatever golf course, it would say FEGGA Scholars at the bottom, and it just flashes through all of these. But you can either say collectively, I'm for sustainable golf, or I'm sustainable golf. Or actually, in your case, you would say, maybe you'd say we're sustainable golf.
Sure.
So once we get off this, you guys can, I know you must be starving. I forgot even about the time difference over there. But to just get somewhere, you know, even sitting like that, and if somebody can just record it, that would be great. Take a couple takes, and I'll send Bevan where to send the video in.
Would it maybe be an idea, because there's, I think, guys from 6 different countries that they actually speak it in their own language?
Yeah, so we are doing that. So actually, I mean, I didn't want to ask for too much, but if you wanted to have somebody separately say I'm Sustainable Golf in their own language, that would be great too. But then have the one collectively, we're Sustainable Golf.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's great, Kelly. Thanks. All right. Seeing as everybody's hungry, Dean, back to you just to finish off.
Okay. Well, first of all, Jonathan, Kelly, big thank you on behalf of us all. I think to prepare and engage with us all for 3 hours, big compliments to you. I know that it's a busy time for you, but we all do appreciate it. And I can say FEGGA really does appreciate the work that you all engage in. I think that for the students, I think in the last 4 to 6 weeks, they realize even more and learn a lot more about golf environmental management. They learn a lot more about the focus that the industry is playing within environmental golf course management. And I think that they've, in the last couple of weeks, as Bevan has said, set up this environmental group. The one really good thing about the program is that these guys really do get to engage and actually actively produce something that actually has meaning, and actually it's sustainable in its own right, because things that students were doing last year are still being done on the golf course now. So they do have longevity to them. And I think that to use to the students, I mean, I think that today you will see the tools that are made available to all of you, both as golf clubs, as individuals. You will see the toolbox it just gets deeper and deeper, and I think that is, for me, I mean, I'm coming up to working in the industry now for nearly 50 years. I was one of the greenkeepers that worked in the 1970s. I was one of those greenkeepers that pushed a sprayer with no protective clothing and really didn't give much consideration to the product that I was using. And we didn't think about that too much because we lived in a world where we didn't. So when I look at where we were and where we've come to now, it's considerable. It's unbelievable, and it makes me very proud, not just of our industry, but with GEO and all these organizations that have made golf quite special. And golf is doing an awful lot. Sometimes we do tend to talk a little bit more about the negatives, but I think that's because we care. We want to make it better. But I think really to finally say to the students, I think you realize now you all have a responsibility. You all individually can make a difference. And you can be, when you finish in October and you go back to your own country, you can be a champion for environment. You can be a leader. And you don't have to do that alone. You see today that there's a lot of people that can give you the support to do that. And it's people like you that can make a difference. So I really hope that you will continue this journey and actually do the things that we've all been working with and take it into a new dimension. I mean, as Jonathan said, you're the next era and you can continue to make a difference. I have to say, from a personal perspective, I've really enjoyed the last 3 hours. And I've spent so much time over the years with Jonathan and Kelli, and we've talked, but I tell you, it's one of the most engaging 3 hours from an environment perspective that I've had in a long time, and I've made a stack of notes because there are things that you've got me thinking about today also. And so yeah, it's been really enjoyable to me, and you know, sometimes for an old dude like me, I need inspiring sometimes, and you've done that for me this afternoon, so I appreciate that, and thank you very much. And thank you for everybody, because you've all collectively made it a really good 3 hour session. I think we all have something to take away from this, so thank you all very much.
Nice. Thank you, Dean. Now, for the scholars' benefit, Dean, Kelli, and I usually, and Alan, usually finish off these types of speeches with a bottle of red wine at a bar somewhere. But we're not able to do that this time. But I'd encourage you all to go away.
Don't include me with that, Jonathan.
Get a beer and skål. Skål.
Don't include me with that. That's only you and Dean. Not even
Jonathan. Jonathan.
Yeah.
Supporting Dean's wine bill is not sustainable.
I can't be perfect all the while.
I can just say a massive thanks on this side from us in Sweden. I think I agree with everything that Dean said. It's been fantastic. Learned a lot and inspired me as well. So huge thank you, Kelli.
Well, and to the scholars, you guys inspire us. So you got to keep us on our toes too.
Yeah. Thanks for your time.
All right.
Thank you.
Nice
Thank
one.
you.
Thanks
Thank
very
you
much,
all.
Jonathan and Kelli.
Cheers.
Thanks.
Bye-bye now.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.